Greetings, artists. This week we are going to be creating an architectural design, and for this project it's actually going to take 3 separate steps in order to complete the project. That could take you the entire week though, just depending on how quickly you work. So for the very first step, we're going to work on the background paper under our architectural design. The second step will be splatter painting the background paper. So you will need a white paper for your architectural design that we're going to decorate today. You'll also need a dark paper. It doesn't have to be black if you don't have that at home. You will need watercolor paints. In the picture, this is liquid watercolors. That is not a supply you have to have. You could use a pan of watercolors, or I'm also going to teach you how to use marker if you don't have watercolor at home. You will need a Sharpie and a pencil to do your drawing, and then you'll need scissors and glue to cut it out. So I am going to go ahead and get us started. For the first step, we are going to decorate our background for our architectural design. So I need my white paper, I need a bucket of water, a brush, and I either need a pan of watercolors or I could also use washable marker, and I'm going to show you how to do that first. So if I'm using the washable marker, I'm going to move my brush to the side. I'm just going to color in areas. I might want to use like almost like a starburst design, kind of like that. I want to layer them close to one another. They don't necessarily have to overlap, but if I overlap them, I'm going to like that effect a little better. And my marker, that marker was running out of ink, so I'm getting rid of it. All right, I'm just going to do this small area here so you can see what the marker design looks like. All right, so with the marker, I can do this 2 ways. I can color my paper with the marker first, and then I can use a brush and water. And I'm just going to brush quickly across that washable marker, and it will actually turn those colors into watercolor, and they'll blend together. Now, I did this on purpose. I used complementary colors. Purple and yellow are across from each other on the color wheel. And so as they blend together, it's going to kind of make a little bit of a muddy color, and that's okay with me. It doesn't bother me at all. I can also go in while it's wet and kind of add a little more marker, and that will help it blend. The other option would be if I have a water bottle, I could just spray the marker, and that will splatter or spread the paint. Since I do have a water bottle, I'm going to use that to wet my paper to show you the next step for if you have watercolor markers. For this background, we're really going to use what I call a wet on wet technique. It's when we have our paper super saturated or wet, and then we're going to use that water to let our watercolor paints blend together. So I'm going to get lots of water and watercolor on my brush, and then I'm going to lay it down in the water. And if I don't have a squirt bottle, that's totally fine. You don't have to have one. You can just get the paper wet with your actual brush and your water. But essentially what I'm doing here, friends, is I'm going to let that water blend my colors together. Ooh, why am I so fuzzy? That's not good. There we go. Okay, so as you can see in here, when I put this color down in that super saturated paper, those 2 colors are mixing together themselves. I'm not going to use the brush to blend the colors together because I want the water to do that for me. It's going to give it kind of a marbled look, and that's exactly what I'm going for. So for this step, I'm just going to use lots and lots of water. I'm going to keep my brush moving. I've got to work quickly because the paper will soak up the water pretty fast. And I'm just going to allow that water to take the color and blend it together. So I'm going to switch here. Let's see. Oh, this watercolor tray is so new, I couldn't even tell which color was purple because the blue, the black, and the violet all look alike. So here we go. Ooh, see that? Swirl. It's all starting to swirl together. The purple is going to start to rotate in with the orange and the red, and I'm just going to let it. So working super, super quickly. I'm going to come over here and switch to some green, I think. One thing I definitely want to make sure that I'm doing for this step, friends, is I want to make sure that I'm working in a spot where I can kind of leave my paper to dry, because as you can see, I've got a large amount of very wet paint in the center of my paper there. If I pick my paper up to move it, like if I'm working at my dining table and I can't leave my paper there until it's dry, that paint is going to move across my paper. And that's definitely not something we want happening, because that will, number one, it'll make a mess. It'll get paint somewhere where paint maybe shouldn't be in your home. And number two, it might mess up the marble design that you have created. So again, lots and lots of water. I'm going to keep my brush moving quickly across my paper, filling in those areas as quickly as I can, so I don't give my paint time to dry. I'm going to come back down here with some red in this space. I want to make sure I'm working on a wet paper, so if I get to a spot and I'm like, oh no, that area has dried, I need to lay down a little more water, and then I can drop in some more paint, because I want the water to move the paint across my paper. If I tried using marker and I'm like, I don't really think I like how that turned out, I can always go back over it with watercolor. That will not hurt a thing. Again, I want to make sure I use lots and lots of water, so I let that blend and spread by itself. One thing that you'll notice about mine kind of has a ripple in it, and so it's making kind of like a river of water, which I don't super love. That's not the effect I was going for, and that's because as I'm painting my paper, it's getting curved because it can't handle being this saturated. If that happens to you, you can take a Kleenex, a tissue, or a paper towel, or anything absorbent, and just kind of gently blot. I don't want to rub because I don't want to blend the colors together. I just want to gently dab that so I can lift some of that color off, because I don't want a muddy trench down the middle of my paper. I want my colors to be nice and bright. So again, you are using a wet on wet technique with watercolor or washable marker if you don't have watercolor at home, and you're just going to cover your entire paper, letting the super wet paint blend together right on your paper. Happy creating!